We thought we knew the story. A brilliant voice, a tragic fall, and a life lost too soon. But the truth about Amy Winehouse runs deeper than addiction and paparazzi flashbulbs. Behind the headlines was a complex world of mental illness, toxic love, industry pressure, and missed cries for help. This wasn't just a public meltdown. It was a slow, preventable unraveling. She wasn't just failed by fame, she was failed by the very people meant to protect her. The mystery isn't how she died, it's how so many watched her struggle and still let it happen. A star is born, but so is the pressure. When Amy Winehouse released her debut album Frank in 2003, the music world paused. Here was a 19-year-old with the voice of a lifetime, deep, smoky, and unfiltered. Her lyrics weren't polished for radio. They were raw, sharp-edged reflections of a real young woman navigating life, love, and regret. Critics hailed her as the next big thing, but what set her apart wasn't ambition, it was authenticity. Then came 2006, and with it, Back to Black. This time, she wasn't just a rising star, she was a global sensation. 5 Grammys, chart domination. Her sound, old school soul with a modern bite, reignited an industry obsessed with polish and perfection. But success came with a darker echo. The fame hit fast and hard. Paparazzi followed her every move. Sudden wealth, media pressure, and an increasingly demanding public turned her world upside down. Behind the scenes, friends noticed she wasn't handling the spotlight well. Producers talked about her becoming emotionally fragile, even while churning out chart-topping hits. Amy, who had once freely walked Camden streets, now had to dodge flashbulbs just to buy cigarettes. She was still just a young woman, thrown into a machine she couldn't control. The label wanted more music, fans wanted more access, the tabloids wanted more scandal. Everyone wanted something from her. And in the middle of all that noise, Amy started to dim. The world loved the voice, but it barely paused to care for the person behind it. That's the silent pressure no one sees until it's too late. Behind the Beehive, a life of inner turmoil. Beneath the iconic beehive, bold eyeliner, and tattoos, Amy Winehouse was hiding, not from fame, but from herself. She was diagnosed with bulimia and bipolar disorder, 2 deeply misunderstood conditions, especially in a world that preferred to see her as quirky or rebellious rather than someone quietly unraveling. On stage, she was electric, funny, magnetic, brutally honest. But off stage, she was often battling what her friend Tyler James called a deep, soul-crushing loneliness. That loneliness didn't come out in interviews. It came out in her notebooks, her lyrics, her late-night phone calls to friends. Music wasn't just her career, it was her lifeline, the one way she made sense of the chaos. Amy often said she didn't write songs for others. She wrote them because she had to, because there were things inside her that she didn't know how to say out loud. She joked in interviews, made light of dark things. People mistook that for strength. But in truth, she was tired. Her journals, discovered after her death, read like pages from someone desperately trying to understand why she felt so lost. And yet, she never stopped performing, never stopped smiling when the cameras rolled. Amy wasn't running from fame. She was just trying to survive in a world that wouldn't give her space to breathe. Her pain didn't define her, but it was never far behind. And while everyone admired the style, the voice, the presence, they often missed the girl beneath it all, crying for help in the most poetic way she knew, through song. The love that derailed her, Blake Fielder, civil. Amy Winehouse didn't fall in love. She crashed into it, headfirst and unguarded. In 2005, she met Blake Fielder Civil, a man whose name would become forever tied to her story. From the start, it was intense, messy, magnetic, and dangerous. Friends noticed the change in her almost immediately. She stopped showing up to studios. Her once controlled chaos began spilling into every part of her life. Blake wasn't just a partner, he was the storm. And Amy, for all her brilliance, couldn't walk away. Their relationship was a cycle: breakups, makeups, late-night fights, public displays of affection, followed by tabloid scandals. It wasn't just love, it was obsession. "I'd give up anything for him," she reportedly told friends. And tragically, she did. It was Blake who introduced Amy to heroin and crack cocaine, turning personal pain into physical addiction. Once that door opened, it never really closed. When they married in 2007, it should have been a moment of stability, but it was just more chaos wrapped in ceremony. Their bond wasn't healing, it was toxic codependence, a relationship where love blurred into self-destruction. When Blake was arrested, Amy's world shattered further. She spiraled, drinking more, using more, pushing away people who tried to help. The press, of course, devoured it. Paparazzi caught every stumble, every outburst, every bruise. But no one saw what was really happening. A woman drowning in devotion, refusing to let go of the very thing pulling her under. The tragedy isn't just that Blake hurt her, it's that Amy didn't believe she deserved anything better. In a world that kept taking from her, Blake gave her attention, chaos, and validation. And in her eyes, that was enough. Media exploitation, the making of a tragedy. Amy Winehouse didn't just live under a microscope, she lived under a spotlight that never turned off. The British tabloids followed her like a shadow, documenting every breakdown, every drunken night, every stumble outside a pub. The headlines were cruel. Amy crack house, wasted again. She wasn't a person to them. She was clickbait. What made it worse was how normalized it became. It was entertainment, something people scrolled past with a smirk, not a second thought. But behind those blurry images was a woman slipping further away. Paparazzi chased her through streets, camped outside her home, yelled questions as she cried. Her pain became a public spectacle, something to laugh at, not care about. Amy knew it. She said it plainly, "I'm a musician, not a show pony." But no one stopped. The more she unraveled, the more they filmed. And while the media pretended to be observers, they were participants. They didn't just watch the fall, they accelerated it. Every relapse became a cover story. Every fight with Blake, a viral clip. It didn't matter if she was in recovery or breaking down. What mattered was how messy the footage looked. Compassion was rare. Headlines mocked her mental health, her body, her addiction. No empathy, no pause, just profit. And here's the real heartbreak. The same media that shamed her would later mourn her. Posthumous tributes filled pages that once ridiculed her struggles. But by then it was too late. The damage was done. Amy was gone, and the public realized, far too late, that behind the headlines was a brilliant, broken artist, crushed not just by addiction, but by a world that refused to see her as human. Rehab or revenue? The industry's role. By early 2011, Amy Winehouse wasn't hiding her struggles. Everyone knew. She had canceled shows, slurred words on stage, and looked visibly unwell. But still, the machine kept moving. Label executives and tour organizers knew she wasn't stable. Yet a European tour was scheduled anyway. Why? Because music sells, even if the artist is falling apart. Her final concert in Belgrade was a public unraveling. She stumbled, forgot lyrics, and barely made it through songs. The crowd booed. Footage went viral. It should have been a red flag, a cry for help seen around the world. But the industry had seen it all before, hadn't they? This wasn't new, it was routine. Addiction experts had warned. Amy wasn't fit to tour, but the warnings were ignored or delayed. After Belgrade, the tour was canceled. Her team said it was for her health. But many close to her questioned, why did it take a disaster to stop it? Amy wasn't just fighting drugs. She was fighting an industry that treated her recovery as a commercial inconvenience. Some people around her cared deeply, but others, they needed shows. They needed albums. They needed the icon, even if the woman inside was breaking down. And the most haunting part? She had started trying. She'd been clean for weeks near the end. She was pulling back. But she wasn't given time. The clock ran out too soon. In the end, the question lingers. Did the industry try to save Amy Winehouse? Or did it just try to keep her going long enough to turn a profit? The last days, a slow descent. In July 2011, Amy Winehouse seemed quieter, not just in public, but in spirit. Friends described her as more introspective, withdrawn, almost at peace. After years of chaos, she was finally trying to get clean, not through a clinic or rehab, but in her own way. She was staying in Camden, the London neighborhood that had seen every chapter of her rise and fall, familiar streets, familiar ghosts. On July 20th, she was seen outside her home, looking thin, tired, but not intoxicated. Those close to her said she'd been sober for over 3 weeks, attempting a fresh start without external pressure. Her doctor visited her the day before she died and later said Amy was lucid, positive, and calm. They made plans for the future. She seemed like she was finally turning a corner, but addiction doesn't leave quietly. Experts warn that after a period of sobriety, the body becomes more vulnerable. The same amount of alcohol or drugs that a person once tolerated can now become lethal. And on the night of July 22nd, Amy drank again, alone. No friends, no protection. The next day, on July 23rd, 2011, she was found lifeless in her bedroom. The toxicology report showed a blood alcohol content of 0.416%, a level so high it can cause instant respiratory failure. She had simply passed out and stopped breathing. No one was there to help. What makes it even more painful is the silence that surrounded her final hours. Security footage showed no visitors. She hadn't called anyone. Reports later revealed her body may have lain there for over 24 hours before being discovered. The rumors began almost instantly: suicide, overdose, foul play. But the coroner ruled it accidental alcohol poisoning. No drugs, no violence, just a relapse that went too far. Amy Winehouse died at 27, a number heavy with music history. But behind that tragic symmetry is a question that still haunts many. Why was she alone? How could someone so surrounded by fame die so quietly? Her last days weren't filled with drama. They were filled with silence. And in that silence, we lost a voice we'll never hear again. Post-mortem questions. What really happened? When someone as famous and fragile as Amy Winehouse dies suddenly, answers don't come easy. The headlines rush to conclusions. The internet lit up with theories. But as the dust settled, the most pressing question wasn't how she died. It was, why was no one there to stop it? Amy's battle with addiction was no secret. Everyone, from her label to her family to the public, had seen it unfold in real time. She'd had overdoses before. She'd relapsed before. But this time, something was different. She had been trying to get better. There were no recent scandals, no drug charges, no public outbursts, just quiet effort. So why, knowing her history, was she left completely alone? Her family claimed she had been doing well. Friends thought the worst was behind her. But addiction is deceptive. It can seem calm just before it storms. Some reports suggest she had asked to be left alone that weekend. Others hint that those around her assumed she was just sleeping it off. The hard truth is, no one checked in time. Security footage from her Camden home revealed no visitors for hours. No medical staff, no managers, no friends. It wasn't until her bodyguard came to check on her the next afternoon that anyone realized she was gone. The timeline is still murky. Some believe she had been dead for up to a full day before being found. Rumors of suicide swirled early on, but the coroner's report was clear. Accidental death by alcohol poisoning. No signs of intentional harm. Still, doubts linger. People ask, was it really accidental? Or did years of being failed by the systems meant to protect her slowly wear her down to the point that she stopped trying? A second inquest in 2013 reaffirmed the first: no foul play, just alcohol, isolation, and a system that moved too slowly. And that's the cruelest part. Amy didn't die at the peak of a bender. She died in the quiet aftermath, when everyone thought she was finally okay. Her death didn't come like a storm. It came like a whisper, a reminder that the fight isn't over when the headlines fade. Sometimes it's just beginning. Family tensions. The Winehouses speak. Amy's death left a hole, but it also reopened old wounds. The spotlight, once aimed at her, now turned to her family, especially her father, Mitch Winehouse. In the years following her passing, Mitch became a public voice for her legacy. He wrote a memoir, appeared on talk shows, and helped establish the Amy Winehouse Foundation. He spoke about her struggles with love and pride, often defending the family's choices. But not everyone agreed with his version of events. Many fans, and even close friends, felt that Mitch had enabled parts of her lifestyle, that he downplayed her addiction, that he missed warning signs, that he cared, but too late. The most explosive critique came from the 2015 documentary Amy. Directed by Asif Kapadia, the film used real footage, voicemails, and private videos to build an unfiltered timeline of Amy's life. It didn't paint Mitch as a villain, but it didn't spare him either. It showed moments where she begged to leave rehab early, scenes where she was pushed into performances she wasn't ready for. A portrait formed of a young woman surrounded by people who loved her but didn't always protect her. Mitch publicly criticized the film, calling it misleading and unbalanced. He claimed scenes were taken out of context, that Amy wouldn't have wanted to be remembered that way. But the damage was done. The documentary won an Oscar. Millions saw it, and it reshaped how the world saw Amy, not as a train wreck, but as a deeply sensitive artist who slipped through the cracks. Since then, the Winehouse family has continued to honor her memory through charities, interviews, and public tributes. But tension remains. Fans are still divided. Some believe her family did what they could. Others think more could have been done. In truth, no one leaves a tragedy like this unscathed. Grief is messy, memory is biased, and for every person who loved Amy, there's a different story of who tried to help and who stood by as she fell. The only thing everyone agrees on? We lost her too soon, and the truth, as always, is more complicated than anyone wants to admit. Unfinished music, unanswered regret. After Amy Winehouse died, silence filled the space where her voice used to live. But somewhere in London, in hard drives and studio vaults, pieces of her unfinished story remained. Unreleased demos, incomplete verses, half-sung choruses, songs she never got to finish, thoughts she never got to share. Her label, Island Records, had a choice: release them or let them rest. In the end, they locked most of it away. Executives called it exploitation, to release material Amy hadn't approved. Others saw it differently, fans hungry for more, wondering what could have been. What direction was she heading in? What kind of artist would Amy have become had she lived? We got a glimpse in Linus, Hidden Treasures, released in late 2011. It wasn't a full album in the traditional sense. It was a collection, a patchwork of covers, alternate takes, and songs she had quietly crafted in her final years. Some were intimate, others were rough, but they reminded the world of what we'd lost. Not just a singer, but a true composer of feeling. People close to her say Amy had started shifting musically. Less pop, more jazz, more stripped back, more mature. She spoke often about artists like Tony Bennett, who she recorded with shortly before her death. That session, according to Bennett himself, was unlike anything he'd experienced. He later said, "She was the purest jazz singer I ever met." High praise from a legend, but not surprising to those who truly listened. Amy's future could have been brilliant, not just chart-topping, but soul-defining. She wasn't planning to ride fame forever. She was trying to evolve, to escape the machine and become something deeper. But she never got the chance. The songs left behind are frozen in time, like voice memos from a version of Amy we never met. And so, her musical story remains unfinished. Not because she ran out of things to say, but because the world didn't give her time to say them. Her silence now speaks volumes. And in every unreleased demo, there's a lingering question. What if she had lived long enough to truly become who she was becoming? Legacy of pain and genius. Amy Winehouse didn't just join the 27 Club, she became its most haunting modern member. Like Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, and Jim Morrison before her, she left behind a world still trying to understand the cost of genius. But Amy's story is different. It happened in the era of smartphones, tabloids, and viral videos. We didn't just lose her, we watched her go, one headline at a time. Her death didn't just spark grief, it sparked questions about how we treat mental illness in the spotlight, about how the music industry handles addiction, about why public compassion so often comes too late. In her absence, those questions have echoed louder than any of her Grammy wins. But even through the pain, Amy's influence lives on. You hear it in the voices of artists like Adele, Lady Gaga, and Billie Eilish, all of whom cite her as a reason they believed rawness could work. That flaws didn't have to be hidden, that pain could be poetic. Amy taught us that broken didn't mean weak, it meant real. In 2021, a statue of Amy was unveiled in Camden, just a short walk from the pub she once sang in. Fans still gather there, leaving flowers, notes, lipstick kisses on the bronze. She's not forgotten. She's a symbol now, not of addiction, but of authenticity. But the truth is, Amy never asked to be a symbol. She just wanted to make music that meant something. She wanted to love and be loved. She wanted to laugh with friends and maybe one day fade out of the spotlight on her own terms. Her legacy is a paradox, one of brilliance and tragedy, of genius wrapped in vulnerability. The world applauded her talent, but overlooked her pain until it was too late. And that's the real loss. Amy once wrote, "I'm not scared of dying, I'm scared of not living right." She lived fast, loved hard, and gave us everything she had. But the world didn't protect her the way she protected her songs. And in the end, we're left with a voice that feels alive, but a future that was stolen. The mystery isn't in how she died. It's in what we could have done differently, and what we'll do next time when we see the signs, but still have the chance to act. Amy Winehouse didn't die in silence. She died unheard. Her story forces us to confront how we treat the vulnerable behind the fame. It's a warning, a heartbreak, and a legacy we can't ignore. Because next time, it might not just be a headline, it might be someone else's last chance.